Can you take pictures? Oh, are you allowed to take pictures? Yeah. No flash.
My baby!
No flash.
Wait for me! Baby?
All night, Lane.
I didn't think you'd like to watch, sir.
I'm sorry for that. For your sake, I don't dance accurately. Anyone can dance accurately, but I dance with wonderful expression. As far as my dancing is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science for life, do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Actually, sir, 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? Nah. I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens. Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. I mean, really, if the lower orders can't set us a good example, what on earth is the use in them? They seem as a class that have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear? Ernest, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What should bring anyone else anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to have some slight refreshment at
5 o'clock, sir.
No. Where have you been?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Neighbors.
You've got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Yes. Of course. Hello. What is this? Why these cups? Why these cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta.
And...
Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful!
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid she won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you said you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
It's very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic in a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I were ever married, I'd certainly try to protect the fact.
Quite aware of that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memory is so curiously constituted.
There'll be no speculating on that. Divorces are made in heaven. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They ordered especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time!
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
What very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I do not think you ever will be.
And why on earth would you say that?
Well, in the first place, women never marry the men they flirt with. Women don't think it right.
Well, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my second cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you shall have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Do you mean to tell me you've had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you'd have let me know. I was writing very frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering an extremely large reward.
I certainly wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
No good offering a reward now that the thing is found.
Oh, that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter. For, with the inscription inside, I don't think the thing isn't yours at all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. You no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It's very genuinely to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture with you. I simply want my cigarette case back!
Yes, because this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a gift from someone of the name Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes. Charming old lady she is too, lives up at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily?
Ah!
With her fondness, with her fondness, with dear.
Dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some ants are tall, some ants are not tall. That is a matter that surely an ant should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every ant is exactly like your ant. That's absurd, for heaven's sake, just give it back!
Yes, but why did she call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There's no objection that makes to an ant being a small ant. But why an ant one her size may be should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, the name isn't Jack at all. It's Earnest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it's Earnest. I've introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You look as if your name was Earnest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Earnest. It's on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany. I shall keep this as a proof that your name is Ernest if you ever try to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to, anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes. But that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, you'd much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you speak exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to speak like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces false impressions.
That's exactly what dentists always do. Go on. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed bunburyist.
What on earth is a bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
I'll produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was just a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect you couldn't possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly, however, that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real explanations. They're hardly serious enough. When one is placed in a position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. Indeed, it is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce much towards one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I've always pretended to having a brother by the name Earnest who lives in the Albany and gets the most dreadful scrapes from time to time. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be so tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You'd much better leave that to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. Now, go on.
Whatever that thing you said was, Bunbury, I'm not it.
Well, I have invented a perfectly invaluable brother called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country as often as I like. You've invented a very useful young brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to go up into town as often as you like. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I have really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
I really think you would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm treated as a member of the family, and set down with either no woman at all, or 2. And in the third place, whenever I know perfectly well whom she will set me next to, she will set me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. Now, that's not very pleasant, and it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. But, now that I know you to be firm Bunburys, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'm going to kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. So, I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you are ever married, which seems to me highly problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that is nonsense. If I marry a sweet, charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she's the only girl I saw in my life, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is not.
That, my dear young fellow, is a theory that the corrupt French drama have been propounding for the last 50 years.
And that the happy English home has proven half that time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be so cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't easy to be anything nowadays, my dear fellow. There's such a lot of beastly competition about it. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get around to the room for 10 minutes so that you may have an opportunity at proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you at Wills's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. Go enjoy the sun, dears. But ensure you come when you're caught. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite right. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
Oh, you are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh! I hope I'm not that. That will leave no room for further development, and I intend to develop in many different directions.
I'm sorry, Algernon, if we are a little late, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't seen her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman quite so changed. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here,
Thanks,
Gwendolyn?
Mama. Quite comfortable where I am.
Gwendolyn?
Good heavens, Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumber sandwiches. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some comfort with Lady Harbury, a woman who seems to me to live entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
Oh, the color certainly has changed, but from what cause, I of course cannot say. I'm quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm seating you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice lady and so attentive to her husband. It'll be so delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not. It would throw my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again.
It is very strange, Algernon, that this Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, this Mr. Bunbury needs to decide if he's going to live or die. The question is absurd. I in no way condone the modern sympathy with invalids. I find it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling your poor uncle that, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. But I would be much obliged if you were to ask Mr. Bunbury from me to not have a relapse this Saturday. It is my last reception, and one wants something to particularly encourage conversation, especially at the end of the season when everyone has said practically everything they had to say, which in most cases is not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious. And I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, then people don't talk, and if one plays bad music, then people don't listen. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up, if you'll kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. That's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful, with a few exaggerations, of course. French music, I can simply not allow. People always seem to think that it's improper and either act shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German seems a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it to be so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
Well, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any girl I've ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. You've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from different from you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. This fact is constantly mentioned in more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love a man of the name Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. And the moment that Algernon mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Oh, passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, but that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, there's absolute resemblance to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It creates music of its own. It has vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No! No! There's very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It creates absolutely no vibrations. Besides, I have known many Jacks, and they have all, without exception, been more than usually plain. Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman married to a man called John. She'll probably never know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you've led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you're not absolutely indifferent to me either.
I adore you, but nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on yet.
Well, may I propose now?
An admirable idea, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what do you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Yes, of course I will. How long have you been about it?
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, I know. Very little experience in how to propose. I know my brother often proposes for practice. My girlfriends often tell me so. Oh my God. Oh, what wonderfully brown eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite brown. I hope you will always look at me just like this, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Burke! Christ, from the semi-recumbent posture is most indecorous.
Mama! I must beg you to retire. Mr. Worthing has
Finished? What, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father shall inform you of the fact. Engagement is something that should come upon a young girl as a surprise, as pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a thing she can be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. And while making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
The carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mama.
Gwendolyn, the carriage! You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know, Mr. Worthing?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I in no way condone anything that tampers with modern ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. Oh, and the whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. It has no effect in London as it is. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
Investments, chiefly.
Mr. Worthing, that is satisfactory. What between the duties exacted in one's lifetime and the duties exacted after one's death? Land ceases to be a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position but prevents one from holding it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I own a country house, of course, with some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? That point can be cleared up later. You do have a townhouse, I hope. You can hardly expect a girl with such a simple, unspoiled nature as Gwendolyn to reside in the country.
I own a place in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
These days, age is no guarantee of respectability and character. What house number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that can quite easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
They count as Tories. They dine with us, or come at the evening at any rate. Now, to minor matters. Are both your parents living, Mr. Worthing?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, could be considered a misfortune. But to lose two, well, that just looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man's son. Was he born in what the purple papers call the radical commons? Or did he rise in the ranks of aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know, Lady Bracknell. I said I lost both my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say my parents seem to have lost me. I don't know who I am by birth. I was found. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a somewhat large brown leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what particular locality did Mr. Thomas or James Cardew find you?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Victoria Station!
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line, sir, is immaterial. I must say I'm a bit bewildered by what you've just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a certain discontempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. And it reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume I do not need to tell you what that tragic movement led to! And as the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station could be used to conceal a certain social indiscretion. And indeed, I believe it has been used for that purpose before now. So, you can hardly be assured that it has been used for a position in good society.
May I ask you then what you advise me to do? I need hardly say I'd do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
Mr. Worthing, I would strongly advise you to require as many relations as possible and to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I can possibly manage to do that, Lady Bracknell. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my just in case. I know I really think that should be enough to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Please, sir, what does it got to do with me? You can hardly imagine I, Lord Bracknell, will allow our only daughter raised with the utmost care to marry into a cloak and to form an alliance with the apostle. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning!
Good morning. Heaven's sake, don't play the ghastly tune, Algie! How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwendolyn refused you? I know it's a way she has, always refusing people. I think it's most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I have never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she's a monster without being a myth, but it's rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own relations before you in that way.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
It's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter. You always seem to want to argue things.
That's exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I would kill myself. You don't suppose there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy, and no man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
Phrased, and just as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death with cleverness. Everyone's clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
Fools? Oh, the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
Dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What interesting ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty. And to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Before the end of the week, I shall have gotten rid of Ernest. I shall say he died of apoplexy in Paris. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the kind of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
And you're quite sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the kind?
Of course it isn't.
All right, that settles it. My brother Ernest is carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a good deal?
Cecily isn't a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite. Goes long walks and never pays any attention at all to her lessons.
I should very much like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty. And she's only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
One doesn't blurt these things out to people. Gwendolyn and Cecily are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sisters.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things. If you want to get a good table at Willis, we really must go and dress. Did you know it's nearly 7?
It's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I've never known you when you weren't.
But what should we do after dinner? Go to a theater?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to a club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well, let us trot around the Empire at 10.
No, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what should we do?
Nothing.
It's so hard doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work where there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
On my work.
Algie, kindly junior back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn? No, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algernon, you always talk such a strictly immoral attitude towards life, and you're not quite old enough to do that yet.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had on Mama, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and although I may marry someone else and marry often, nothing she could possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the inner fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination, and the simplicity of your character is exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address in Albi I have, but what is your country address?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There's a good postal both surface, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. This, of course, will take some serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Glass of sherry.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow should be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
You're a perfect pessimist.
Thank you, sir.
Now there's a sweet, sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, is all.
If you're not careful, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Well, that is nonsense. You're never talking anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Come along.
Starts to sing spring, spring. When the little blue bell in the bottom of the dell starts to ring, ding, ding. When the little blue bird in the middle of his word starts to tune to the moon above. It is nature, that's all, simply telling us to fall in love. Birds do, bees do, even educated fleas do. Let's do it, let's fall in love. In Spain, the best upper sets do it. Lithuanians, let's do it, let's do it, let's fall in love. The Dutch in old Amsterdam do it, not to mention the Finns. Folks in Siam do it. Think of Siamese twins, some Argentines without means do it. People say in Boston even beans do it. Let's do it, let's fall in love. Romantic sponges, they say, do it. Oysters down in Oyster Bay.
Cecily!
Let's
Shoot!
do it. Let's
Cecily? Surely such a utilitarian occupation as the dancing with flowers is rather molten duty than yours. Especially at a moment when such intellectual pleasures await you. Your German's on the table. Open to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lessons.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he was leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is always very serious. Sometimes he's so serious, I think he can be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health. His gravity of demeanor is to be especially commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
Suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment, triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
Mr. Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I know you certainly would. You know German and theology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I don't think that even I could produce any effect on such a character that, according to his own brother's admissions, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. Cecily, you must put away your diary. I do not see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carried about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that never happened or couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all 3-volume novels that Moody sent us.
Do not speak slightly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Sure, really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I use the term in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Telephone coming up through the garden.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Dr. Chasuble, this is a pleasure.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it'll do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything of a headache.
Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt it instinctively. In fact, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Ooh, I'm afraid I am.
How strange if our fortune hath been Miss Prism's pupil. I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor is drawn from bees. Has Mr. Worthing returned from town yet?
Oh, we don't expect him until Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those sole aim in life is enjoyment. And by all accounts, unfortunate that him and his brothers turn out to be. But I will not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Algeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, really, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at even song.
I think, too, Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all. A walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Mrs. Prism, with pleasure. We may go as far as the schools and back.
That sounds delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter that follows the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geology, horrid German. Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station, and he's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing would be for the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother? Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Oh, yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that he and Miss Prism were in the garden together, and he said that he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
I'm sorry. I think you're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I am really not wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you're not, then you certainly have been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being good all the time. That will be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I suppose I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
Well, I don't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That's a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm very anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
Well, I don't think you require any neckties. He's going to send you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, next world, and Australia.
The reports I've had on Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not that. That's why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
Thank you. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
Marshall Neal?
I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you were like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I
talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
But Miss Prism says all good looks are snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to them about.
You're too much alone, dear doctor. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, but a woman-thrope? Never.
I do not believe I deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church is distinctively against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you don't seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of a woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. Oh, I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruit. Where's Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools. Cecily!
Cecily!
For life is a void till you'll enjoy.
I didn't expect you till Monday afternoon.
I've returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Trosble, you are, I hope, well?
I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead. Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I'm sure he'll profit by it.
I offer you my sincere condolences, Mr. Worthing, at least for the consolation of knowing you the most forgiving and generous of brothers.
Poor Ernest! He had many faults, but it is a sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him in the end?
No! He died abroad! In Paris, in fact! Oh, I had a telegram from the manager at the Grand Hotel last night.
What was the cause of death mentioned?
Severe chill.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Dear Miss Prism, I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the internment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris! I fear that hardly states any serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish for me to make some slight allusion to this domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be presented in almost any occasion, joyful when the present case distressing. I've preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmation, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the society for the prevention of discontent, for the bishop, the analogy that I drew.
That reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, dear doctor. I suppose you know how to christen, all right. I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
interested in Mr. Worthing. Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes. But it is not for any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children. The fact is, I'd like to be christened myself. This afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
Surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But do you have any grave doubts on the subject?
Certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
No, not at all. The immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Yes, or sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Yes. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly. I have 2 similar cases to perform at the time. A case of twins that happened on the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Mr. Jenkins of Carter was a hard-working man.
Do not see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would seem childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. But I will not intrude any longer on this house of sorrow. I really beg you not to be bowed down too much by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
Seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes I've got to dig on change them.
Cecily!
Child.
What's the matter? Uncle Jack? You look happy. You look as if you had toothache. Oh, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother! Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
This is nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, but he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
Brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly disgraceful. Oh, good heavens!
I have come down from town expressly to say that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand, are you?
Oh, nothing would induce me to shake his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. Surely there must be some good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasure of London to sit by a better place.
Oh, Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about Mr. Bunbury and his terrible, terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or anything else for that matter. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit that the faults are all on my side. But I must say that Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I was expecting a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you're going to refuse your brother's hand, then I will never forgive you.
Never forgive
Never.
Well, this will be the last time I shall ever do it.
It's beautiful, is not see such perfect a reconciliation. I think you might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prison. The task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
I feel very happy.
Oh, let's not be premature in our judgments.
Young scoundrels! You must be out of this place at once! I don't allow any Bunbury here!
I've put Mr. Ernest Worthing's luggage in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and placed it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I shall not be able to stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures to the smallest degree.
Why understand that?
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your quote. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth would you grow up and change? It is very childish to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying with you in your house for a whole week as a guest.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4 to 5 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly of me. If I was in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I'd think it most unfriendly if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes. But do it quickly. I've never seen anyone take so long to dress. You know, such little result.
That is better than being always overdressed as you are.
Well, if I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4 to 5 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that's everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back for a picnic. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It's always painful to part from people who one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes?
Yes, nice, sir.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to see it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of own thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publications. When it appears in a volume form, I hope you order copies. Don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictations. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on now. I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Ever since I first set eyes upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack will be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week and at the same hour.
I don't care about Uncle Jack. I don't care about anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Yes, of course, you silly boy. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
And how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. And the next day, I bought this little ring in your name. Oh, and this is a little bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I get you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you're wonderfully good taste, Ernest. Excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But, my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do you let me read them, Cecily?
No, it'll make you far too conceited. Besides, the 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off the engagement are so beautiful, so badly spelled. Now it's hard to read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today, I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I'd done nothing at all, Cecily. I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out. Cookie?
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair grows naturally, doesn't it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily?
I don't think I can now that I actually met you. Besides, there's a question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but there's always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name's Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence, and I pity any married woman whose husband's not called Ernest.
But my dear child, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
Oh, what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Lovely little darling. I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's no bad name. In fact, it's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But really, Cecily, if my name was Algernon, couldn't you let me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practices of the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Charles was a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see at once on a most important christening, on most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and we've only met for the first time today, I think it is rather hard for you to leave me such a long period of half an hour.